8, the Electoral College. The candidates work hard for every vote they get. When all the votes are counted on election day, whoever receives the most wins what is called the popular vote. But believe it or not, whoever wins the most votes does not necessarily become president. Although every vote counts, the way a presidential election is ultimately decided is different than you might expect. Did you realize that whoever gets the most votes when people go and vote might not be the person who actually wins the election?
No. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about why. More than 2 centuries ago, when only about 4 million people lived in the United States, our country's founders created something called the Electoral College. The Electoral College isn't a school. It isn't even a place. It's a group of people called electors who cast their vote for the president after the votes on election day come in. Electors don't actually get elected themselves. They are chosen by their political parties in their home states. Each state gets a certain number of electors depending on how many members of Congress are from that state. California, the state with the most people living in it, has 55 electoral votes. Wyoming, the state with the lowest population, has 3. Counting all 50 states, there are 538 electors, so a candidate must win a majority, which is 270 electoral votes, to land the presidency. How do the electors decide whom to vote for? It depends on who wins the popular vote in their states. Remember, the popular vote is the actual votes cast by the people when they go to vote. If more people in Arizona vote for Donald Trump than for any other candidate, then the state's 11 electors will all cast their votes for him. In 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, can split up their electoral votes. When the Electoral College was created, Americans, especially people living outside of urban areas, were much less informed about the candidates. Think about back when the Electoral College was created. Was there social media?
No.
No. Was there TVs?
No.
There wasn't a quick way. They did have newspapers, but there was not a quick way for everyone to get access to the information. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
When can Donald Trump vote for himself?
Yes. As long as the person is an American citizen, which they have to be able to run for an elected office, then yes, they can vote.
Can their family vote for them?
Absolutely. Anyone who is registered to vote can vote. Our founders wanted to ensure that citizens in less populated areas were represented in the presidential vote as well as those in big cities. Some people believe that the Electoral College is unfair and unnecessary since people in all parts of the country now have access to information about the candidates and the important issues facing the country. They think that the candidate who wins the most votes should become president, the same as in any other election for public office. Others argue that the Electoral College still provides a more equal representation between areas of the country with higher populations and those with fewer people. So, most recently, in the 2016 election, Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton received about 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, but she still lost the election. Does anybody want to take a guess at how many other times in U.S. history a candidate's lost the popular vote but won the electoral vote that determines who wins the presidency?
I do.
What are you thinking, Christopher?
Like, how many presidents are there? 42. There's like 42. They're like all.
You're just thinking about how many times that the president has not won the popular vote, that has won the electoral vote and has become president.
Donald Trump?
No.
No.
Or Harper, what are you thinking? What's your guess?
Kennedy.
How many?
John.
How many times?
5. 17.
Okay, what are you thinking?
4.
Okay, Justice?
25.
Olivia?
32.
Owen?
13. 25.
The correct answer is, Christopher, what are you thinking?
10.
4.
What?
Correct answer is 4. 4 times in U.S. history, or 4 other times, so a total of 5. 4 other times in U.S. history, candidates lost the popular vote, but won the electoral vote. All right, Chapter 9. Red, white, and purple. Red, blue, and purple. Some states, such as New York and California, are called blue states. That's the color that represents the Democratic Party. They're called blue because the majority of the people in those states vote for the Democratic presidential candidate nearly all of the time. Other states, such as Tennessee and South Dakota, tend to be won by Republicans. Those states are called red states. Red's the color of the Republican Party. And some states are called purple states because it's hard to predict which party will win there. Many people will vote Republican or red. Many people will vote Democrat and blue. So why do you think they chose purple?
Because it's mixed together?
Yeah, because when you mix blue and red together, it makes purple. Unpredictable purple states are known as swing states. These states can swing an election either way. This is why candidates will spend much of their time campaigning in swing states, because winning there may win them the presidency. Historically, some swing states are Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Colorado. Chapter 10, the home stretch. Have you ever watched Olympic runners or a NASCAR race?
Yes.
You can usually see who is in the lead moment by moment. In a political race, this isn't possible. So campaigns rely on polls, which are surveys of voters. Polls are taken by newspapers, TV stations, news organizations, universities, and private polling companies. Of course, there's no way to ask all Americans who they're voting for. So the poll asks a randomly selected group of people whom they were voting for if the election were held that day. Ideally, the results of the small group reflect a much larger group of U.S. voters. However, in 2016, all the polls were predicting a big Hillary Clinton victory over Donald Trump, and that didn't happen. Big upsets, as well as very close calls, have happened before. On November 2nd, 1948, it seemed almost certain that a man named Thomas Dewey was going to beat the current president, Harry S. Truman. Dewey was leading in almost every poll. So much so that on the morning of November 3rd, the Chicago Daily Tribune printed on the front page headline of the newspaper, "Dewey defeats Truman." Have you ever heard of President Dewey? Probably not, because that's because he actually lost. A famous photo of Truman taken a few days after the election show him with a copy of that newspaper high in the air with a big smile. The 1960 race between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon was so close that NBC News did not say that Kennedy had won until 7 a.m. the next morning. Some of the most exciting parts of a presidential race are the debates. There are usually 3 in the general election campaign. These debates on TV are way more exciting than all the early primary election debates, because now one of the people on stage will actually become the president. The debates are conducted by one or more moderators who will ask questions covering different topics. A candidate's answers show how they would govern and how well the candidate thinks on their feet. Often the candidates get into heated arguments. A toss of the coin decides who gets the first question. The candidate will have a set amount of time to answer. Their opponent will then have a set amount of time to respond. That is called a rebuttal. Occasionally, a candidate will get to make a rebuttal to their opponent's rebuttal. Candidates will sometimes try to avoid answering a difficult question. They may change the subject or attack their opponent rather than say something the audience might not like. At the end of the debate, each candidate will make a short closing statement repeating why they are the best person to be president. In recent years, the two vice presidential candidates have also met for one nationally televised debate. Another form of a debate is a town hall, where members of the audience ask the candidates questions. The questions also come from people via social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. During a town hall debate, the candidates move around the room and can address someone in the audience directly. It's always interesting to watch the body language of the candidates. Do they seem confident, friendly, nervous? All right, last chapter. Election day. That's where we're at today. Yes, ma'am.
If somebody moved, or if somebody is born here and moved to like England or something, could they still vote for president here?
They have to be a citizen of the United States, so it depends on if their citizenship has changed.
Miss Whitley?
Yes, Dylan, thank you for raising your hand.
How many presidents can enter the thing? Like, how many people can
Enter the race? As many people as want to. Remember we talked earlier about, and then that anybody can put their name in. Then they, the major political parties narrow it down to one candidate during,
How many were in this one?
I'm not sure exactly how many started out. There were quite a few. Remember it said that all the Democratic nominees couldn't even fit on one debate stage. Yes, sir, Harper. Not right this minute. Yes.
What time is the election?
Do what?
What time is the election?
The election today, the polls are open from 7:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night. The polls close at 7:30 tonight.
My dad's going to vote today.
Okay. Yes, Cash.
When will we know who wins?
When they get all the votes counted. And then the Electoral College casts their votes. Chapter 11, Election Day. It's finally here, Election Day. The day that all the months of campaigning have led up to, when millions of Americans across the country will cast their votes for president. Voting takes place at polling places. Schools, churches, and community centers are often used as polling places. U.S. citizens must register to vote in advance in most states, but many allow same-day registration. Some states automatically register their residents to vote when they turn 18. When voters arrive at the polling place, they check in at a desk. The next stop is the polling booth, where the voting actually takes place. Sometimes there is a long line for the booths, especially for presidential elections. When a booth is available, the voter goes inside. There are some people who don't decide whom to vote for until this very moment. Only one adult voter at a time is allowed in each booth, so that no one can see who they vote for. Some states allow kids to accompany grown-ups in the voting booths. Does your state allow this? Has anybody been with their parents or grandparents to vote?
Yes.
No. Arkansas does allow kids to go in the voting booth with their parents.
But we can't.
You can't vote. But you can go in with your parents.
I want to vote.
What if a person can't get to their polling place on election day? Perhaps they are going to college in another state, or they serve in the military overseas. Or maybe they're not well enough to leave their house. Maybe they have a job and can't get off from work to go vote. In cases like these, citizens may send in absentee ballots. These votes are cast in advance that sometimes are not counted until after election day. In some states, there's early voting and people can vote weeks before election day. That happened in Arkansas. I know a lot of you have said your parents had already voted.
Yeah,
I went
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I went and voted last Monday, so we used early voting. People can also mail in their ballots in certain states. Polls begin to close in the eastern United States at 6 o'clock at night. The final polls in Hawaii close 7 hours later. Then all the votes are tallied. Take a look at the map of the United States As the results are announced throughout election night, color in each state red or blue depending on who is declared the winner. We'll do that tomorrow after we have the votes are in. We'll begin coloring in the map. Each state on the map shows how many electoral votes it has. So someone may be ahead early in the evening, but later on another candidate may come from behind as more states report their vote. Since there are a total of 538 electoral votes, a candidate has to get at least 270 to win. If there happens to be a tie, each candidate gets 269 electoral votes, then the House of Representatives, each state casts one single vote, and the candidate with the majority wins. Election day will come and go, but it's not the end of the process. We often compare elections to a contest or race, but now that it's over, the real work begins. On January 20th, 2021, which is known as Inauguration Day, on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, the winner will be sworn into office as the President of the United States. What kind of president will they be? Will they keep the promises made during the campaign? Will they work with Congress and members of both political parties? Will they make decisions that improve the lives of all U.S. citizens? Almost right away, preparations will begin for the 2024 presidential election, then 2028 and beyond.
Will it ever